Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to session number 2 of the PENC Virtual Raleigh Seminar. Again, I'm Katie Cox, the PENC Membership Director. If you have any technical issues today, please use the chat box and I will assist you. We will be taking questions throughout the presentation, and you can type those into the questions box or the chat box, and I will read those out loud to our speaker. Again, thank you to our sponsors for supporting our program today. We really appreciate everyone that helped support this program. Today's speaker is Andrew Ritter. Mr. Ritter has been with the North Carolina Board of Examiners since 1993 and has been the executive director since 2001. He has also been an investigator and the supervisor of investigations. He has served on national committees for ethics, law enforcement, international licensure, education accreditation and licensure qualifications, and served as national chair of the MBA committee for NCEES. He has served as a guest lecturer on ethics and license promotion at NCSU, Duke, and UNC Charlotte, and served on advisory boards for UNCW and NCA&T. He was selected to proctor the first exams given in Saudi Arabia and Taiwan, and assisted in developing licensure models for several international countries, including Japan, the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and the UAE. Mr. Ritter has a Bachelor of Science degree in Criminal Justice from Appalachian State University and a Master's in Public Administration from NC State University with a concentration in finance. Mr. Ritter, I'll turn it over to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Katie. That long bio just means I've been here a long time. I actually just had my 27th year anniversary a couple weeks ago, so it's been a long time. But anyway, as Katie mentioned, I prefer to take questions as we go. Anything is on the table. Anything I talk about or any questions you might have about what the board is doing, go ahead and type up your questions and get them to Katie, and she'll interrupt me. We're gonna quit by 1 o'clock, so don't save your questions to the end, and I certainly don't mind being interrupted. And I just want to start by thanking PENC for inviting me. The board likes to get out and explain what's going on and talk to the licensees about what's going on at the licensing board. So I appreciate PENC for asking me. I do know we're supposed to have close to 100 people on this webcast this afternoon. I like to think it's because I'm going to be talking about something exciting. But I do know it's renewal time and some people need PDHs. I will talk a little bit about renewals and PDHs a little bit further along in my program. But if you do have any questions about how to renew and continue education, let me know about that as well. So jumping into my program, again, I like to point out, the primary mission of the board is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. We've been around since 1921. We're actually getting ready to have our 100-year anniversary as a licensing board next year, and the board is going to plan on, COVID permitting, we're planning on doing some ceremonies to recognize that this licensing board has been in existence for 100 years. I do like to point out that ever since I've been with the board, and probably predating my being hired by the board, this board has had a long and productive relationship with PENC, and we continue to do so, and we like to keep it that way. Of course, PENC's #1 mission is to protect the interests of the professional engineers, and ours is to protect the public, but our missions often are hand in hand, and I think the success and the reputation that the engineers and surveyors have in North Carolina is directly related to the relationship we've had with PENC and ACEC and the North Carolina Surveying Society. We always like to be upfront with PENC with what we're doing, and we appreciate the honest feedback that PENC has given us over the years. It's just made our profession stronger, and it's made our mission easier when everybody's on the same page. Just to update everybody on where we are with the board. Of course, we have 9 board members, 4 professional engineers, 3 land surveyors, and 2 public members. Currently, Bobby Shields, who is a structural PE out of Charlotte, is our current board chair. John Logsdon, a surveyor in North Wilkesboro, is the vice chair, and Carl Ellington, who's also down in Charlotte, airport engineer, is our board secretary. Their terms actually end at the end of the year, and our new chair will be Mr. Logsdon, and Jonathan Kerr, who's a public member, will be the vice chair, and Dennis Hoyle, who's one of your PE&C members, will be my new board secretary. Again, as a reminder, the board member terms are 5 years long. You're eligible for up to 2 5-year appointments. And on the engineering side, Mr. Shields' term actually ends at the end of the year. He is up for reappointment and has filed his application with the governor to be reappointed. The next appointment that comes up where there's an engineer cannot be reappointed is Carl Ellington. Comes off next year. And his slot will be up for appointment for those who are interested. If anybody actually ever is interested in being a board member, I highly recommend you contact me. The board has no say, nor does it want any say in who is going to be appointed. But I do like to talk to prospective members about the time commitment. I do think sometimes new board members who are unfamiliar with how the board operates don't realize we are a working board, and there is a time commitment both out of board meetings doing homework and reading reports, and then on top of actual board meetings and national meetings that we travel to. There is a time commitment. So if anybody's ever interested, please give me a call or email, and I'll walk you through that process. Here's just the same list, just vertically. Again, 4 engineers, 3 surveyors, 2 public members. Again, I just like to give reminders. The board is based on what we call the 3-legged stool. Education, exams, and experience are the 3 legs of the stool. That's essentially what we do every day. Is we review applications, we give the exam, and we get people licensed. And as mentioned before, we're in our renewal season. And then the 4th thing we do is enforcement. I'm going to touch on each of those as part of this program. I like to give sort of a state of the union, where we stand. Again, I've been doing this program for a long time, and when I've come to your summer meetings, I sort of always introduce this as data that might only be important to me, but I do think it's important to PE&C and the membership of PE&C to see where we stand engineering and surveying population-wise. What's the health of our profession? So we have 3 types of licenses here at the board. We have, of course, PE licenses, we have PLS licenses, and firm licenses. We're coming up on 35,000 total number of licensees. Sliding specifically to the PEs in particular, this slide goes back to 2010. You can see the PEs continue to grow. We grow anywhere from 2 to 4% a year. We just crossed into 28,000 licensed professional engineers in the state of North Carolina. This slide goes back to 2010, but I always like to benchmark myself when I started here, which was 1993. In 1993, North Carolina was the 28th largest state population-wise in the country, and we were the 28th largest professional engineering state in the country. Now it's 2020. We are the 8th largest population state in the country, and we are the 8th largest professional engineering state in the country. So we're healthy in the professional engineering world. We continue to grow. It grows like clockwork. It's a metronome, 2 to 4% every year. We grow. Of those 28,000, 13,000 or so reside in North Carolina. The residents of North Carolina, about 15,000 are residents of other states. It used to be about 50-50, and it's sort of slid to About 47% live in North Carolina, about 53% live out of North Carolina. We sort of just view that as an indicator of that North Carolina is we're a very healthy state. We've got a lot of projects going on and a lot of out-of-state engineers. A lot of big companies with a lot of out-of-state engineers are doing work here. On the other hand, we look at our PLS numbers. It's an odd graph. The data window is not as big as PE, so you can't really take it too far. This number here is 2,600, and this number here is 2,400. So you're only talking a swing of 200 surveyors. But the important thing to see is the surveying number is going down, and it has consistently been going down for about the past 5 years. I don't know what to make of that. I can't tell you that's good news, bad news, or other. I can just report this as news. A couple things to point out why I say it's just news. As previously mentioned, the PE population number, we're 8th in the country, mirroring the 8th population number in the country. Surveyors are number 3 in the country, which is out of whack. It's out of skew. We've been number 2. We've been number 3. We sort of flip-flop with Florida. California is number 1 by a lot. Should North Carolina be number 2 or number 3 in the country? I don't know, but that's a pretty high number. So when you talk to the surveying community about the fact that the numbers are going down, and is that good news or bad news, the surveyors who aren't getting work view that as good news, that we're losing surveyors. And the surveyors who have a lot of work view it as bad news because they can't hire surveyors to help them with their workload.
There's a quick question,
Sure.
Andrew. It says surveying seems to have been de-emphasized in universities. There seems to be a brain drain in the industry. How might the board address this?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because you're hitting on a lot of little branches that are concerning to the surveying industry. And when I go to the surveying professional society meetings, this is a hot topic. So this board introduced the surveying degree as the BS in surveying degree as a path to licensure about 15 years ago. And most states on the East Coast have a surveying bachelor's degree requirement. And what's interesting is there's really no 4-year degree programs in surveying. There's one at North Carolina A&T, there's one in Old Dominion, there's one in East Tennessee, but they're few and far between. And then on top of that, you look at NC State, when they cut, you can date an engineer by how many hours they had to graduate from, we'll just use NC State. It used to be 160 hours to graduate from NC State in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and then it was 134 or 142, and then 134, and then 128. Now it's 122 to graduate from NC State in engineering. And so a lot of classes were chopped, and what was chopped was surveying. You used to need, as a civil engineer, you used to need 2 classes in surveying to graduate. Now you don't need any. They only offer 1 elective class in surveying at NC State. They've eliminated it at Duke. So and then going down a different branch, the number 1 demographic taking and passing the surveying exam right now are civil engineering students coming out of NC State and UNC Charlotte, who, for whatever reason, whether they worked in construction management as an intern, or they did construction staking, part of a construction internship, they're our number 1 demographic passing the surveying exam. So yes, surveying has been de-emphasized. It's a huge topic in the surveying industry. Nobody seems to know the answer. There's got to be program cuts, and in civil engineering, it was surveying that got cut. And then you look at BS in surveying, there's not enough students to warrant a program, which is why there's no surveying programs in the United, or not a lot of surveying programs in the United States. Yet we still have 2,400 licensed surveyors in the state of North Carolina. So most of the time, the way the government and the industry reacts is when there's an extreme shortage, then they'll fix the shortage. When there's a teaching shortage, then they addressed it. When there was a nursing shortage, then they addressed it. Well, there's no surveying shortage right now, so nobody's addressing it. So long way to say I don't have an answer to that question. It was de-emphasized for they needed to cut classes and there's not enough students. So we still have 2,400 surveyors out there. Unfortunately, their average age is 61. There's far more leaving than coming in. And, technology's changed in surveying, so it's become a lot harder to pass the test. And, it's all vertical surveying is hot, whether it's drones or GIS or LiDAR. So again, not much of an answer, but the surveying industry is talking about this all the time. My chart is self-explanatory. We're losing surveyors, but we still have 2,400. I imagine it won't be addressed until that number probably gets close to 1,000, which is where Virginia is, by the way. Okay, moving on. Here's our firms. Our firms are healthy. They're actually my healthiest growth. This slide 10 years ago was 3,100. We're at 4,200 in 2020. It's about a 33% growth over a decade. A lot of that has to do with how well the industry is doing in North Carolina, how construction projects are going in North Carolina. We're a pro-business state. Our office here, I've talked about this before. We have a very restrictive firm licensure law in the state of North Carolina. It's not ours, it's the Secretary of State's 55B. But our office does not view our role to throw down hurdles to getting licensed in North Carolina. We view the restrictive law as a means to protecting the public, and we will help any firm we can to get licensed. We don't say you're not eligible. Our staff tells people this is what it takes to get licensed, and then we help them through the process. So very pro business here, and you can see by our firm licensure numbers, we're up to 4,200 licensed firms in the state of North Carolina. All right, the next section is a little bit about disciplinary. I'm going to cruise through it. David Evans, my assistant director here, he's got a 1 to 2 hour long disciplinary program. I know a lot of you have seen it. If you're interested, he has a great slideshow on actual case studies. Every engineer who reads the newsletter, which by the way just went out a couple weeks ago, everybody reads that back page, wants to see who got in trouble and why. And then of course the next reaction is, well, how the hell did they get in trouble? What did they do wrong? So David Evans has got a program that puts out some common scenarios in the form of actual case studies, and then he walks through what the engineer has done wrong to get in trouble. It's actually a way more interesting program than what I put on. So I do recommend it if you haven't seen it. We do break down our violations could be broken down into two broad categories. One of which is you've just made a mistake, and the other is an ethical violation. On the first, the board recognizes that everybody is entitled to make a mistake. What the board holds high in the investigative process is how you reacted to that mistake. Did you deny it? Did you recognize it and try and fix it? Did you try and work with your client? Those things are all considered. And then, of course, the latter being the ethical violation. You knew what you were doing was wrong and you did it anyway. Those factor into how the person is disciplined. Again, really what we spin off of is the rules of professional conduct. I do know that not everybody takes the time to review the rules of professional conduct. It's not something you say, okay, I'm going to read the rules today. But if you're ever going to read any literature that the board has put out, the rules of professional conduct cover pretty much everything you do every day. How to hire people, how to advertise, how to bid for projects, how to sign and seal documents, how to conduct yourself. So if you ever want to catch up on board literature, take the 5 minutes to read the rules of professional conduct. All our disciplinary violations come out of the rules of professional conduct. Okay, this is our some more data. We opened a little over 100 cases in fiscal year 2019. That's our recent data. Fiscal year 2020 is not quite over yet. You can see the chart gets a little tight, but you can see of those 100 plus cases, 38% are against engineers, 25% are against surveyors, and then the remaining amount is against unlicensed individuals or firms in general. So, and I'm going to cover that a little bit more in detail here in the next couple slides. I'm not sure I'm a big fan of this slide. It tends to be a little bit misleading, but this is the source of engineering and firm cases. Everybody wants to know who's filing the complaints. This slide makes it appear that the board is overly active in the disciplinary process, but the board being the source of complaints comes out of a couple different things, and it's not us being proactive. If we're looking at a current disciplinary case and the person has filed a case against engineer A, and we go through the evidence and it really looks like engineer B or engineer C was the person who was at fault, the board will then open the case. We get a lot of continuing education cases that come out of failed audits, and the board is the complainant in that. And CPC violations are actually the top 1 or 2 types of cases we get every year. So that board 71% number is a little bit misleading. Really what you need to be looking at is this part of the pie. And the biggest number of cases come out of our inspections department in North Carolina. Staff over the last 20 years has done a good job of going down to inspections departments, giving out 89C and the board rules and our business cards and saying, if you have, issues with professional engineers and their work, let us know. So the inspections department has become our #1 source of technical violations. And that's both at the local level, whether, it's the city of Raleigh, the city of Charlotte, or, Wake County, New Hanover County inspections. We get a lot of complaints coming out of DEQ, used to be Diener, a lot of cases coming out of them. And really what we've told them is nobody knows better the difference between, making some mistakes and really just bad work when it comes to, submitting work for permit. They're the front line of inspections. And if they, look at some engineers' work and they're like, okay, those are normal type revisions we need, we've told them not to send it to us. But if the permit is over the top with errors, we say that's what needs to come to us. And nobody's better at that than inspections. The inspection official doesn't need to be telling the engineer how to do their work. And if they have to, that's a complaint we want to see. The second largest complaint in the PE disciplinary process, of course, is the public, which is usually the customer. Actually, it's 99% of the time it's the customer. So you've made your client mad, you made your customer mad. That's who becomes the complainant. So, the engineers, when we give the disciplinary program, they often ask, well, what's the best way to stay out of trouble? And we have sort of 2 catch-all answers. With the inspections department, for us, it's fairly easy. Don't do work you're not qualified to do. If you're filling out a permit application and you don't know the answers and you don't know what you're doing, don't do that work. That's what causes the problems. And then when it comes to your customer, doesn't always work, but we say the #1 way to stay out of trouble is communicate with your client. Return that last phone call. The client will call us and say, I want to file a complaint against, Joe Smith. And we always say, well, have you talked to Joe Smith? And they say, well, Joe Smith has stopped calling me back. And that's when the complaint will come in. So, you never know when that last phone call is going to be, but we do know that communicating with your client is the best way to keep them from filing a complaint against you. Just to touch on surveying, completely different. This 20% number for the board is the same reason as on the engineering side. A lot of CPC audit failures or opening a case that was ancillary to another case. But with surveyors, 65% of their cases come from their client or their client's next door neighbor. The next door neighbor's easy to explain. They didn't like where the survey line was. They don't like where the monuments ended up. That ends up being a complaint. But again, the same answer to surveyors as we give the engineers: communicate with your client, call them back. We had a famous case here where the client turned in the surveyor, and we asked the client, why did you turn the surveyor in? And she said, well, I was knocking on his front door. He had locked his office door. I knocked on it. I saw him run out the back and get in his pickup truck and leave. And that's when I decided to file the complaint. And when we asked the surveyor about it, he said, I couldn't talk to her anymore. So I saw her coming up the front path. I locked the door. I ran out the back door, got in my truck. And we said, well, that's why she filed the complaint. And he said, well, I didn't want to talk to her anymore. And we said, well, that's always the one more conversation. And you didn't have that one more conversation. That's why she turned you in. So again, the important thing about surveying, it's most of the time it's your client, and on the engineering side, most of the time it's the inspector. So these are slides coming out of David Evans' program. I actually stole them from him. I give him credit. Like I said, we opened slightly over 100 cases in 2019. This has become an issue for us. We had a board member who'd been on the board for 3 or 4 years. We'd always made the general statement, 95% of our complaints came from 5% of our licensees, and we always said it kind of tongue in cheek, but this board member had been on the board for a few years and he started seeing repeat offenders. And so he said, well, you guys keep saying that and you're saying it tongue in cheek, but can you put together some numbers for me? Because I want to see that. So it's become a very important piece of information for the board and other board members. You know, our disciplinary, the way we can discipline engineers and surveyors is we can reprimand up to a $5,000 civil penalty, and then we can suspend or revoke or make you taking some continuing education. And really, when an engineer does something wrong the first time, we're not going to hit him with a $5,000 fine or take his license. So we'll hit him with a $1,000 fine. And sometimes on a project where you're getting paid $10,000 or $20,000, $1,000 is not very much, and it's sometimes just looked at as the cost of doing business. And to us, that becomes sort of an ethical type issue. So, that previous slide where we had 28,000 licensed engineers in the state of North Carolina, we only have, 40 to 50 cases against engineers a year. Or let me go back to let me restate that. 28,000 total, pardon me. I confused myself a little bit. There's 30,000 licensed engineers and surveyors in the state of North Carolina. We had 100 cases. So the odds of getting turned in are very, very, very small, 100 out of 30,000. Well, here what this slide is showing is 25 of those have come before us, which to us is just an incredible number. And of those 25, they average coming to us at least twice before. So that goes back to my how are engineers and surveyors get in trouble? Well, they're either making mistakes or they're unethical. And what we have found is if you make a mistake and you come before us, you don't make the mistake again, and you learn from the lesson. You learn your lesson, then you improve your practice and you move on, and that's to us a great part of the process. But it's the unethical ones who keep coming before us, and it will take several violations before we're able to take their license. So these slides are important to us. And just here's some more that show the 5% are actually causing quite a bit of problems. And again, if these slides are of interest and to PENC, then David Evans has got a great program. That's just a pie chart showing what I was just saying, 32% and 40. The surveying side tends to be a little bit worse. Their numbers are lower, so percentage-wise, that repeat offender takes up a lot of our time. A quick slide, just because you get turned into the board doesn't mean you're gonna get in trouble. The discipline rate is about 50%. I would say we view our disciplinary process as being very fair. We give you 4 opportunities to explain to us what went wrong. But if you ever get in trouble and you're confused and you're nervous, pick up the phone and give us a call, and we'll walk you through the process. We're not out to get any engineer or surveyor. We're out to protect the public. And if you didn't do anything wrong, we're going to explain that to the public. After every disciplinary committee, if the engineer's found not guilty, we will go back to the public and explain why. They're not going to be happy, but we'll explain to them, yeah, something might have gone wrong, but it wasn't your engineer. Here's some information on firms getting in trouble. The firm usually is not who the board is concerned with. What we're really concerned with is who signed and sealed the drawings, who issued the report. It's the seal and the signature that is the most important thing to us. They're the ones, the individual is responsible for the work. We usually don't go after the firm. The issues we would have with the firm usually are along the lines of not having a resident professional in each office or not listing branch offices with us, that sort of thing. Okay, this is big for us. I like to touch on this. The North Carolina board does not have jurisdictional authority over unlicensed practice. I've been talking about this for going on 20 years. The board has tried several times to get statutory authority over unlicensed practice, and we can never actually get to the phase where it's even allowed to be introduced. I did speak with the Surveying Society last week. They're interested. For a long time, this was only an engineering issue, but with the onset of new surveying technologies such as the drones and the GIS and the LiDAR, all 3 of those which I just mentioned, if you're testing to a level of accuracy on authoritative data, you need to have a license as a surveyor to do that work. A lot of GIS firms, a lot of drone companies will do what I just said, and they're not licensed. So the Surveying Society is actually becoming more interested in unlicensed practice, like the engineers have been for a long time. Where the General Assembly has been is the board's job is to regulate licensed engineers and licensed surveyors, and there's mechanisms in place to handle unlicensed practice, which is true. But the mechanisms to handle unlicensed practice, to me, they're not working as well as if we had the authority. There's a number of states in the United States that do have authority over unlicensed practice. We'd like to get it. The General Assembly essentially has told us no. I think ACEC and PENC would be interested in it. I don't know how to make it a starter as opposed to the non-starter that the General Assembly has made it. You can see here about 1/5 of our cases over the past 10 years are unlicensed practice. We're pretty successful once it comes to us in stopping it. We haven't had to have anybody arrested, or we haven't had to go to the Attorney General's office, but we spend a lot of time. As most of you know, we're an independent licensing board, and it's your renewal fees that support our activities that protect the public, and a significant amount of our time and effort go to unlicensed practice, and that's really never recouped. Here's another data set for where unlicensed practice complaints come from. you can see a lot of them come from you engineers who you're the eyes on the ground, and you see it and you let us know. Okay, switching off disciplinary and on to engineering exams and how to get licensed. I will not spend a lot of time in this. I'll get bogged down, but everything's changed in the last several years. If you have questions, hit me with them. I've talked to you guys about probably the last 3 or 4 years about how the license process has changed. I will start by saying very odd year for us. COVID canceled the April PE exam, which was huge. The FE exams, of course, are all on computer now. So the FE computer centers were shut down, and they reopened in September with the COVID restrictions in place, which limits the number of seats. And of course, you have to wear masks. But they got up and running, and it seems to be back to business as usual for the FE exam. On the PE exam, not so much. I can't see anybody, otherwise I'd see the nods of the head. Most of you took the PE exam at the McKimmon Center. Of course, in April, NC State was shut down, so the McKimmon Center was shut down. Nationwide, the PE exams were all canceled in April, and they were planning on a 2-day examination process in October, assuming everybody was open. It was kind of interesting for us because NCAAS, who administers the exams, called me in September and said, we're normally you have about 350 who take the exam over at the McKimmon Center, and they had over 600 signed up for the double exam. They wanted to give it at the McKimmon Center, but nobody bothered to call NC State to find out that they were actually closed and they couldn't do it at the McKimmon Center. So they ended up over at the Corey Center in Greensboro. For the first time ever, those exams were moved out of the McKimmon Center, and they went over to Greensboro and they gave them. And to help try and catch up, they're actually doing a special administration in January, a site undetermined. I think they're still trying to get over at the McKimmon Center, but I'm not sure how that's going to work out. So it's been an odd year for us exam-wise. But let me jump in and go pretty quick about the FE. As mentioned, the FE exam is all online at Pearson VUE testing facilities. The exam is about 5 to 5.5 hours. Here's our testing numbers. Again, if I was in front of you, I'd ask how many went to NC State, and the usual answer is about 80 to 90% of you in attendance had gone to NC State. What's an interesting number here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. NC State is the 8th largest FE test taker in the country, which is pretty good. Being in the top 10 is an interesting number. Anyway, the FE business is healthy. 50,000 are taking it every year, so we're good. This is just a list of the FE. This is an exam slide I give over to the seniors in NC State, UNC Charlotte, and Duke. The FE exams they can take. This is just the pass rate. Again, I'm not going to uber focus on NC State, although I'm an NC State grad and 80+% of you are NC State grads. The pass rate for the FE exam coming out of NC State is in excess of 80% now. The ag engineers had 100% pass rate. There are numerous programs at NC State that are in the 85 to, oops, that's my phone. Sorry about that. If I knew how to mute my phone, I would mute my phone. Anyway, UNC Charlotte's pass rate is close to 80%, and Duke's, as usual, is around 100%. So the FE process is very, very strong in North Carolina. These are just some more pass rates for the FE exam. By the way, if PENC wants these slides, if anybody wants these slides and PENC wants these slides, I'm more than willing to share them as I go through some of this data pretty quick. Here's a demographic slide of who's taking the exam. For the FE exam, the largest percentage people taking the exam are between 25 and 34, which I would have guessed they would have been younger, but data is what it is. And then the question is, where are PEs going to work? And this slide shows that about 50% are going to work in private practice. 22% is industry, and industry means like a Duke Energy or a DOT. Not really a DOT, but a Duke Energy or this government is the DOT and the Corps of Engineers. 6% are going to get their master's and their PhD. Here's another demographic slide. And again, if I was in front of you, I would say look around the room and you could see that this slide holds pretty true. About 85% are male, 15% female, 75% white. NCAAS and NC State and UNC Charlotte, all the upper education programs are trying to diversify the engineering profession, trying to get more women in, trying to get more minorities in. This number is much better than it was when I started in 1993, but I think everybody would like to see the engineering and surveying world become more diversified. Here's an interesting number. Everybody knows just because you get a degree in engineering doesn't mean you become a PE. 48,000 last year graduated with an engineering degree. 125,000 graduated last year with an engineering degree, but only about 48,000 took the FE exam. So 1 out of every 2.5 to 3 graduates take the FE. Here's the FE exam numbers. We were all worried when the exam went to computer and it was no longer given at the McKibbin Center in April and October, what was going to happen with our numbers. We had a big burst of test takers when they were going online, and now it's stabled out. And I think we're good. What we lost was all the FE exam takers that are not going to become PEs. A lot of engineering students were taking the exam pretty much because there was peer pressure or their professors were saying, go take it. So they'd go take it. They were never going to become a PE. And I'm okay with losing that number. Sometimes they'll come back later in their careers and take the PE exam. But what we really wanted was to not lose the eventual PE person, and we're not losing those. Our PE, as the previous slide showed you, our PE numbers remain strong. What we've lost is the FE test takers who had no plans on ever taking the PE exam, and that number was about 50%. So now people who are going to the licensure path are the ones who are actually are interested in becoming licensed. Here's the information on becoming an intern. This is actually for people who work for you. A lot of people who pass the FE exam either think they're going to be an engineering intern or they want to be an engineering intern. And what we highlight in their letter when they pass the exam is when you pass the FE exam, all that means is you have passed the FE exam. It's not required in the state of North Carolina to be an engineering intern to become a PE. The engineering intern designation is usually either personally driven or business driven. You want to hire them and call them an engineering intern. This is the process. It's free. You need to graduate from college, fill out the form that's online. We'll send them the engineering intern. About 1 out of 3 FE passers become engineering interns, and 2 out of 3 do not. Okay, here's the new process to become a PE. You pass the FE and PE. You make application directly to NCAAS. You graduated from college. And then after you've done all that, you've passed the FE, you've passed the PE, you've graduated from college, and then you have 4 years of engineering experience, then you come and apply to us to become the PE. You know, as I've said for the last several years, you don't come to us first anymore, you come to us last. Again, that has helped us out paperwork wise, because the pass rate on the PE exam is about 50 to 60%. And now the only paperwork we get are the people who have passed the exam and who are actually eligible to become a PE. Most of the PE exams are on computer. The most important one, so a mechanical, which is our second biggest one, is it's civil. More than 55% of licensed engineers in the United States and in North Carolina, 55% are civils. And then mechanicals and electricals are about neck and neck. The mechanical exam is already on computer. The electrical is on computer. The big one, civil, was supposed to be 2022, but with the virus, NCAAS said we better get our butts in gear, and it looks like fall of 2021, the civil PE exam will be on the computer, which we think is good. Nobody complains about that test being on computer. They like it being on computer. You don't have to drive to Raleigh to take that test anymore. You can take it at your local testing facility. You can take it 7 days a week. So it's really helped the test taker just pick a time and go. Structural will be the last one for you structural test takers out there. They say 2024. I have my doubts. The problem that structural has with getting on computer is there's still a lot of essay work involved with that test, and they can't figure out how to restrict the number of textbooks that a structural engineer can bring in and take into the computer testing facility. So they say 2024. I have my doubts about that. Here's a big slide for us. It's the PE pass rates for early test takers. Here's the pass rate. And it's a little fuzzy on the slide, but the peak pass rate is at the 4-year mark. But the pass rate, here's 4 years right here. That's the peak pass rate. Here is the 3-year pass rate. It is not much different. It's about 57% or so on the 4-year window. It's about 53% on the 3-year window. On the 5-year window, it's about 54%. So what I tell the college students when I talk to them is you used to have about a 3-year break between your FE and your PE, and you didn't have to think about taking exams. We now say it's about a 2-year break, and then you should start studying and go to take the test. The exam statistics have showed the closer you take it to college, the better off you are. Here's the 7-year mark. So you can see where the 5-year mark or the 4-year pass rate is, and now you can see where the 7-year and then 8-year drops dramatically. So we're trying to get test takers in as quickly as possible.
Andrew, we've got a question real quick.
Ready.
What is the difference between getting a civil PE versus an environmental?
So the recommendation, so North Carolina is not a discipline-specific state, so we don't care which one you take. So what's recommended is you go to the NCEES website where they have the exam specification page and go to civil and pull up. Most people go to the geotechnical one, who are environmentalists will go to the geotech page, and you read that 4-page exam spec sheet, and it's got 100 items on there that you're responsible for. And then we say go over to the environmental spec page and do the same thing. Go down the 100 items you're responsible for and make an honest assessment, and you pick the test that's going to be easier for you. And what we have found is the civil environmental people coming out of NC State have a higher pass rate on the civil exam. If you have a pure environmental degree or you have your master's environmental, then the environmental exam starts looking to be a better option. The environmental exam has, it has a nuclear problem on there and it has a coal problem on there. And those are things that the civil environmental program at NC State, they're not teaching you. So the difference is go look at those exam spec sheets and you pick the one that is easier for you to pass. And again, most are taking the civil geotech, and then probably maybe the best answer is talk to the environmental people in your firm that you're with and ask them what exam they took. These are exam numbers. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to speed up a little bit. Okay, so it's CPC time. Katie, I don't have any other questions in the queue, do I? I don't want to.
Yeah, we've got one more.
Okay.
Given the number of licensed surveyors is decreasing, what is the board's stance on engineers applying for a surveying license? Are engineers given additional consideration based upon education and experience?
Yes, and there's a proposed change. So the answer is the statute gives you, if you're a PE, it gives you automatic credit towards your surveying license. So if you're a PE, it will give you a year towards your surveying credit. And if you have, so the way the surveying, so I'm wrapping my tongue around myself. The PE requirements are pretty straightforward. It says have a BS in engineering. That's the requirement. The surveying requirement is different. It says have a BS in surveying or equivalent. And then it defines equivalent as having 45 hours in surveying or surveying related classwork. We count the BS in engineering as 30 of those 45 hours automatically. So now you're only missing 15 hours, and then we tell you to send us your transcripts. And a lot of times you're only a class or two short for qualifying as a BS in surveying. And so we'll look at those transcripts on a case-by-case basis. And if you're only missing one or two classes, we let you fill those in. You don't have to get a degree. We'll send you over to Wake Tech, or you go over to NCA&T where there are online classes, and you just take one or two surveying classes. And then you get what we call the equivalent BS in surveying degree. And then the requirement to become a licensed surveyor is only 2 years with the BS or the BS equivalent. So it's a big deal, and the answer is yes. And like I said, the number one demographic taking the surveying exam are engineering students coming out of state and Charlotte, and all they're missing is a class or two, and then they just need 2 years experience. So yes, the answer is a big yes.
We've got a couple more that have come through. Is there an option to pause your license, and what are the requirements to come back and renew it again?
Okay, so yeah, okay, so that's a good segue to where we are. It's renewal time. We prefer that you renew online. You just have to click the link that we sent you by email. If you did not get an email from us, check your junk or spam. Email me, and we'll resend you the link. We have about 90% who renew online, 95% renew online. You have until the end of the year, December 31st. You need 15 continuing education hours. If you don't have any rollover from the year before, if you want to pause your license, we have an inactive status. You check the inactive box when you click on the link. It will say, do you want to renew active? If yes, how many hours do you have? If you check inactive, you don't have to put any hours down. You still pay, and then to come back, you owe us 30 PDHs at the time you want to renew, no matter how long you've been inactive for. Or you can just drop your license, and then if you're gonna go 5 or 6 years without working in North Carolina, we just advise that you drop your license, because the fee will be the same as from inactive to coming back active. So yes, the pause on the license is the inactive button. Did you have
one
another?
more?
Yep,
one more. I've heard people question the need to obtain their personal PE license when they work for a firm that is licensed as a company. I see those two things as complementary, not duplicative. The company has a responsibility and the individual has a responsibility, and one does not replace the other.
Yeah, I'm not sure there was a question in there, but that statement is 100% correct. And it goes back to when I was talking on the disciplinary end. The board views the PE license system as the individual's responsibility. There are firm requirements, but the firm requirements are, they're business issues. Like I said, having a resident professional in every office, signing or having the firm title block on plans. The work is being done by the PE, and if something goes wrong with a set of plans, we're not going to go after the company. I shouldn't phrase it that way. Our issue is not going to be with the company. The issue is going to be with the individual who signed and sealed the work. So yes, the responsibility starts with the individual. There is some synergy with the company, and there are rules for companies, but the technical work being done is the responsibility of the individual.
All right, that's all we've got for now.
Okay. All right, I've got 5 minutes. I want to talk a little bit about CPC, and I'm just going to go through the slides. The slides are important. I did mention in the beginning, I like to think I'm the best speaker in the world, and that's why 100 of you are on here today listening to me, but I also know it's probably more has to do with it's the end of the year. And what we do get a lot of is what counts. What can I count as CPC? So these are just slides from our website. So just go to our website, and here's the standard list of what counts as CPC. Again, you need 15 hours. The max you can report for a year, the max that we're concerned about is 30. 30 gets you 2 years credit. You can only carry over for 12 months. So we tell people, you get 45 or 50 hours. That's great. More education's better, but it's way more than you'll ever need here. We cap it at 30. And these are the things that count. Here are the exemptions to people who need CPC. Back to the person who wants to pause their license. As an inactive person, you do not need CPC. New licensees do not need CPC for the year. If a new licensee does get CPC this year, it will just carry over to next year. If you're serving in the armed forces, you can be exempt. What we're getting now is a lot of COVID type questions. The board did not take a blanket position on exempting for COVID, mostly because this class is a perfect example. We have found about 80% of the classes this year are online and can be done safely from your own home. So we did not go with a blanket COVID exemption. But if there is a particular reason due to COVID or illness or health issues, we do look at exemption requests on a case-by-case basis. So if you are having difficulty getting your hours this year for medical reasons, email me and we will look at it on an individual basis. We audit. Again, if I was in front of you in person, I would say, hey, how many of you have been audited? Some have been audited 3 or 4 times. Some have never been audited. It's a random computer audit of about 3% of our licensees a year. All you have to do is send us your log. If you've been to board approved sponsors, you'll automatically count. Again, these are slides off our website. I'm running out of time. Here's the information on the classes that will count. If you have questions, go to this page. You can always email us and we'll tell you. These are the things that will not count. One of the big ones we get now are online programs that do not have outcome assessment tools, no way to sort of prove that you actually took the class. That's a big one. Ooh, I've got about 100 seconds left and I'm out of slides. So.
All right, we got a couple of questions.
Okay.
If this is my first year as a PE and I need no hours, can any hours I get this year carry over to next year?
Yes, all of them will carry over.
Okay. I've just recently moved abroad and still working in engineering, but not using my PE license, not stamping anything. First question is, am I allowed to maintain my active NC PE license as long as I do my CPC requirements and submit the renewal application?
Yes, there's no, as a matter of fact, we have a big block of people who fit that category. Once they get their license, they never let it go, even though they're not working as an engineer or they're never signing and sealing anything. No, we do not have a residency requirement, and we don't have a requirement that you actually use your seal. So the answer is keep it, just keep getting your hours every year and you're good to go.
They did have a second question. Does it make sense to do that or to turn to inactive status if abroad for more than 2 years?
A personal choice. It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. You can let it go, and then you don't have to think about continuing education. So I think my answer would be, if you're going to get continuing education during the year anyway, then keep it, because the price is the same. If you don't want to care about, or if you don't have to worry about continuing education for the next 24 months, then go inactive. You're just going to have to give us 30 hours to come back.
All right, great. That was great timing. We are at 1 o'clock. That was all the questions. Andrew, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. We will send out the PDH form and the NCFL surveys to the attendees later this afternoon. If there are any additional questions, I can get you Andrew's contact information so you can ask those additionally. All right, and everyone, our next session today is at 2 p.m. So I will see you all shortly. Thanks again, Andrew.
Thank you, Katie.